Okay, to add more to this story about Bess. Now she had originally, she lost her job because of what field it was in, and they narrowed it down. And she was living in the big city, and she was like in her late 40s, and or maybe just turned 50, and she lost her job. And she lived in the big city by herself. She had been married and had kids, and they're adults, and but they lived back in Victorson County, and it was like at least a 2-hour drive, depending on how fast she drove. And they just over time stopped going to see one another. Well, she was basically by herself, all alone in the big city, and she lived in an apartment. And she preferred it, after having a bad marriage and all, and she was finally free. And she wanted to continue, but once she lost her job, she started to notice, how difficult it was to find one. Well, she was used to working a late shift, a late shift. So she finally found one working for a really large grocery store that was open 24 hours, and it was a huge grocery store, like a superstore kind of thing. And it also had, clothing, all that. Well, she found one. She worked a shift that was around 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., and they kind of changed it. And they were also doing things like they were doing stocking, and they were also doing the shopping, for people who were picking up or having their groceries delivered, all that. And she liked it because she felt like it was exercise, and plus she was making enough money so she could stay, and she had a little savings, and she could stay in her apartment, and for all the extra stuff that she wanted. She came from a wealthy family, and she had some money, but still she wanted something to do. Well, after she did that for a while, she didn't know, and none of the people working there knew, that they were on camera. They were being videoed. The whole store, was being videoed, like the stores do. And when it came time to, I think it was maybe like an evaluation, they started, zeroing down on what were the employees doing during their shifts. And that's what they always did. They would go and find what were they doing, and they had to keep a record, signing what, they knew which department they worked in and what they were doing. And one of the things they started noticing about several people was that they were, during the time that, people should certainly have good hygiene habits, they were finding that some people were not, and that included Bess. Okay, so it basically was a huge corporation. They start, the people at that store, the manager and all that, they started noticing this, and they were getting complaints by customers, and who could walk by and see what they were doing, their employees, their staff, and everything was not hyped up. Strike that. Everybody was more concerned about what was going on, and everybody else's hygiene habits, and especially like anything touching their face, their nose, scratching their nose or whatever, in their ears, their eyes, everything. And customers were complaining, and so the management there, they did tell the because some people were calling the corporate office and complaining. But it wasn't just at that store, that location. So they had to go and start doing, they had to search for that too. And then they had to start giving classes on how, how to be, to be proper with their hygiene habits. And, wash your hands after you go to the restroom. All these things that they really didn't at first think that they needed to tell employees. And I mean, like I said, it was big, huge, and these stores were all over the USA, and so they had meetings, and they did classes with them, and told them that their staff that they had complaints and all that. it came down from corporate. They had to do this and teach them. Well, Bess was one of them. Of course, she was, in the meetings too, on her shift, and was, that she had to go through these classes on what you do, and if, don't touch your nose, don't touch your mouth, don't these kinds of things that some people think is just, what most people know. Well, she felt like it wasn't her. It must have been somebody else that, that worked, they did them by shift. It must be somebody else, or maybe it was just some other store. Of course, it wasn't her. She was raised right. And, Bess felt like, this just wasn't something that really concerned her. And she thought it was, she had to sit there and during all these boring meetings and how she felt about that. And she kind of felt superior. She was looking around, other people, seeing, well, who would it be? Okay, so, everybody was told, they went through all these courses. They had to sign paperwork saying that they knew not to do this and everything. And they also had to sign paperwork saying that if they were told, if they were caught, if they had a complaint against them, that it was one time they could have a complaint. And if they didn't, and if there was another one, they'd lose their job. Well, Bess was one of them. She lost her job. She really felt, like she would talk to other ones during the breaks, telling them, that she couldn't believe that there are people out there that work, for this large corporation, these chain stores, that they would do stuff like that. She felt like she was all superior. Because where she was raised in Victorson County, which is a very wealthy county, and she came from a wealthy home, and she just felt like she was superior, that she, it wasn't her. And let me see, she, with all, like customers would even come out late at night, whatever shift she was on. Sometimes it mainly was 12 a.m., 12 midnight until 5 a.m., sometimes later. Sometimes she would work to, more than her shift. It just depended. Like she would help people to, she would help them take the groceries out to people's cars. Early birds came in. And so lots of people saw her during the day. Okay. Well, anyway, so eventually somebody complained. She was helping, taking the groceries out to people's cars, to pack the belongings, people who were picking up the groceries. And she would do things like she wouldn't wear her, face covering right. She'd wear it under her nose, just wouldn't wear it right. And she'd sometimes sneeze or, rub her nose like it itched. And people, she got, 2 complaints back to back about this. So she was fired. That was it. Of course, the management knew that she was one of them because they had it on camera. And she wanted to complain, said she never did that, and they said, we have it on camera. Okay, so she lost that job. And there she was. Now, like I said, she had some savings. She came from a wealthy family. But what she did was she decided, she still didn't want to believe because she felt she was so superior, and she grew up polite society. And, to be so polite and all. So she decided that, she was kind of tired of the big city, plus with everything going on. And she liked living in the big city, but with everything going on, she did want to be closer to her family. And she had heard that they might do some kind of lockdown. So, she, she had a boyfriend that she had met a few years before. And but she decided she was going to think about moving back to Victorson County. So that's where this one leaves off. If you want to watch more, stay tuned. Eventually there will be more on this topic, but it goes much, much deeper. And there's much, much more to this story. Anyway, this is a fictional story. Read the disclaimers in the description box below this video on YouTube. It is copyrighted to me. And can't be used for any purpose. Basically, some of them are rough drafts, some of them are actual stories, and, something like highlights and stuff. So, talk to y'all in another video.